Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. My name is Noor Aiman bin Jafri from DPM6B. Today our group would like to present about Sukuk. So, I would like to present about introduction and the history of Sukuk. Let's go to the introduction of Sukuk. Okay, Sukuk is derived from the word sak, which can mean legal instrument, deed and check. Sak can also mean to strike a seal on a legal document. The point number 2, the definition of Sukuk that I can explain is Sukuk can be defined as a commercial paper that provides investors with the ownership in underlying assets. It is asset-backed trust certificates evidencing of an ownership of an asset or its usufruct. They have some additional feature with this Sukuk. The additional feature is that the Sukuk has a stable income and complies with the principle of Sharia. Okay guys, let's go to the history of Sukuk. First of all is Sukuk transaction took place in Damascus, Syria, in the Great Mosque of Damascus, which is known as Umayyad Mosque, in the 7th century. If you want to know, Syria is a treasure house of culture and history. Okay guys, let's go to the history of Sukuk in the Malaysia. As we know that Malaysia is a leading country in the international Islamic financial system, and we were first country to introduce this Islamic financial instrument, which is known as Sukuk. Malaysia introduced it in 1986, and the Shell is one of the earliest company petroleum institution that used these Sukuk instruments. Okay guys, if you want to know a little bit about Shell, I will explain it. In 1990, Shell Malaysia MDS Sendirian Berhad issued a Sukuk Ijarah worth RM125 million Malaysian. Issuances grew 145% in 2006 compared to 2005 to reach US 27 billion. The Sukuk market after that peaked at US 47 billion in 2007 and dropped by 55%, if I'm not mistaken, to US 21 billion in 2008. Okay, actually the market recovered back in 2009 to reach a total issuance of US 31 billion, which was higher than the total issuance in 2006. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you and Assalamualaikum.
Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is Najiba Binti Jamiasmara from DPM6B. So today I will be explaining about Sukuk. There are several types of Sukuk, but I'm going to explain 5 Sukuk only. First, Sukuk Mudarabah. First Sukuk called as Sukuk Mudarabah. Sukuk Mudarabah is a share profit contract between two parties that come from investor and issuers. However, if there are any loss case happened, everything will be incurred by investor, except if the loss was not caused anything related to investor, such as careless and wrongdoings by partnership management itself, so the loss will be incurred by the issuers itself. Okay, moving to second point, which is Sukuk Musyarakah. Sukuk Musyarakah is a partnership between two or more parties to finance a business venture. All parties are providing capitals into form, which is by cash or anything that can be as a capital for startup of this business. Profit for the venture will be distributed based on the agreed profit sharing ratio. However, loss in business will be shared based on how much the individuals provided for their capitals. Next, Sukuk Murabaha. Do you guys know what is Sukuk Murabaha? Well, Sukuk Murabaha is an asset of sale purchase contract where the cost and profit margin are known to all parties. Moving to al-wakala. Generally, al-wakala is a contract where there is one party that allows another party, which normally called as agent or wakil, for to act on behalf of the investor on agreed terms and conditions for as long as he or she is alive. Here, wakil is appointed to manage the wakala portfolio with the aim of obtaining approval on profit returns. Moving to the last point, which is ijara. Ijara is a contract in which the owner of the asset level agrees to lease the asset to the lessee in a lease agreement for a specific lease period. In a simple words, it means that an owner agreed to rent the asset to his or her tenants in an agreement for a specific period that has been set. However, the ownership of the asset is not transferred and it will always remain with the lessee. So that's all for me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Noordin from class DPM 6B. Today I would like to explain about what is similar sukuk and bonds and difference between sukuk and bonds. Okay, there are some features which are similar sukuk and bonds when you are compare both. The similar like sukuk and bonds used today frequently the return of principal at the maturity regardless of the entity's financial position. There are 5 differences between sukuk and bonds. Firstly, sukuk represent ownership in asset, whereas bond is no ownership in asset. Bonds do not represent any direct ownership on the asset. Secondly, the asset on sukuk must be Sharia compliant, whereas bond is unregistered asset. Bonds can be used to finance at any asset complies with local legislation. Third, sukuk are issued as underlying asset, whereas is bond structure issuer is under debt. Next, sukuk is asset value. The face value of sukuk price is based on the market value of the underlying asset, whereas bond is credit worthiness. The face value of bond price is based on the issuer including rates. Lastly, sukuk is profit after risk sharing. The holder of sukuk receives the share of profits from the underlying asset and accept a share of any loss. Sukuk holder cannot transfer the ownership unless there is underlying asset for the same, because it sometimes happens that debt is aligned with the asset, thus the debt cannot be traded unless sold at par. Bond is interest fixed. Usually, bond receive regularly scheduled and often fixed rate interest payment for the life of the bond, and their principal is guaranteed to be returned at the bond's maturity date. That's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Sharifah Shazrin Binti Hajah from DPM 6B. I would like to share about modus operandi of sukuk. There are 4 types of modus operandi. Okay, first of all, I will share about modus operandi in musyarakah way. Based on what everyone already know, musyarakah means partnership. I will go through with the first step. Okay, for the first step, the investor will form a partnership among themselves to invest in a musyarakah venture. Obtained from the venture will be distributed according to the pre-agreed profit sharing ratio. This musyarakah will be formed on the basis that all musyarakah partners will contribute capital and any profit. Secondly, the issuer who act as an agent to manage the musyarakah venture will receive the capital contribution that was invested by the partners. Thirdly, in return for the capital contribution from the partners, the issuer will issue Musyarakah Sukuk to evidence their proportionate and ownership in the Musyarakah venture. Other than that, I will share about modus operandi in Mudarabah way. Mudarabah means a partnership in profit which one partner provides a capital known as Rabbul Mal, and another partner will provide labor and business expertise known as Mudarib. In the first step, upon completion SPV, which is trustee and Rabbul Mal, hands over the project to the owner. Secondly, SPV enters into an agreement with the owner for construction project, and then the issuer issue a sukuk to raise funds. Finally, Mudarib collects regular profits payment and final capital proceed from project activity for onward distribution to investors. Next, I want to share about modus operandi in Murabahah way, which the seller and buyer agree to cost and markup of an asset. This kind of sukuk is less commonly used other than another sukuk. The process of Murabahah sukuk starts when a company sells an identified asset for cash to the SPV, who is the sukuk issuer. And then SPV then issues sukuk to raise a fund from investors to buy the assets. Thirdly, SPV sells the asset back to the company at a markup for a deferred price. And lastly, the company makes a periodic payment to the SPV, which then distributes the payment to the investors. Lastly, I will share about modus operandi in Wakalah way, which Wakalah is an arrangement between two parties where one of the parties will act on behalf of another party. In the first step, the structure starts with a relationship established between the investors and SPV through the trust certificates. Secondly, SPV, which is the issuer of this sukuk, enter the Wakalah agreement with Wakil. SPV sukuk, which represent an undivided ownership interest in the Wakalah assets. SPV also represent a right of investors to get payments of periodic distribution amounts. The investors subscribe to the sukuk in return for a fixed principal amount, which is sukuk proceeds payable to SPV. The wakil, who has legally agreed to act on behalf of SPV, invests the sukuk proceeds in a pool or portfolio of investments chosen by wakil following specified criteria. And then the sukuk proceeds will be used by the wakil to buy wakalah assets from one or more seller. Next, the wakil on behalf of SPV will manage the asset to generate specific returns. Next, the profit payment will be used to pay periodic distribution amounts payable by SPV to the investors. Lastly, upon maturity, SPV or obligor will exercise their options, which is according to situations under the purchase undertaking to require the obligor.
Hi and Assalamualaikum for everyone. Lastly, I want to explain about the advantage of sukuk and disadvantage of sukuk. My name is Syed Hakim bin Adnan. I'm from DPM 6B. The first one is advantage of sukuk. The first point is unexistence of uncertainty, means gharar. Sukuk is based on an underlying transaction which creates a close link between financing and productive flow. The financing must be channeled for productive purpose such as project financing rather than for speculative activity. Thus, the risk exposure is to the project and not to the uncertainty of activity that have to real economic benefit. Moreover, under the risk sharing principle required, there is an explicit sharing of risk by the financier and the borrower. This arrangement will entail the appropriate due diligence and the integration of the risk associated with the real investment activity into the financial transaction. The real activity is expected to generate sufficient wealth to compensate for the risk. Next, the advantage of sukuk is full disclosure and affair. In addition, transparency represents a basic tenet underlying all Islamic. The profit-sharing feature of Islamic financial transaction impose a high level of disclosure in the financial contract. The accountability of the respective parties involved in the transaction are clearly defined in the contract. Next, cost saving. In Malaysia, there is incentive in the form of cost saving in terms of stamp duty exemption on issue of Islamic private debt security including sukuk. Therefore, it will reduce the burden of the investor. And the last point of advantage of sukuk is diversified investment. Islamic bond may be structured in a verified of way, but typically fall into one of four categories: ijarah, murabbahah, mudarabah, and musyarakah. It is clear from what I have said about sukuk. Sukuk does follow Islamic Sharia, such as no usury and no element of uncertainty, because in sukuk will explain all the data and system in sukuk investment. But there are also have disadvantage in sukuk investment. The first point of disadvantage of sukuk is rigorous documentation. The documentation is rigorous and is not standardized among the industry. Next, complexity of sukuk structure. Difficulty arises in sukuk structure review by Sharia advisor. And the last point of disadvantage of sukuk is lack of liquidity in secondary market. Means less or no repeated issuance that sukuk holder can invest in. So we can see here there are advantage and disadvantage of sukuk investment. But for Muslim must follow Sharia Islamic. This sukuk investment can be used because sukuk investment follow the Islamic Sharia. So that's all for our group. Thank you.